on recording. And hi, Wayne Dorband here at the Alpaca Summit. And we just went through a little bit of technical difficulties as we were trying to get our guest, Ian Watt, on tonight. We are so excited to have him. Ian, I've already been on the phone today with several people, including Bill Cameron, who is real excited. He's probably going to come on here. He wanted to make sure that we didn't steal all of your thunder for him when you're going to talk at his event coming up this summer. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. And he and Jennifer are actually going to be our guests on one of our blabs coming up. And Neil Paget, who's getting ready to be on with us on Friday. And let's see, I was talking with Scott Miller, who was talking about coming on. So we'll see who comes on. And if not, they'll watch us on replays, I'm sure. As I said in some of the emails that I sent out, Ian's got a lot of other namesakes out there. There's one, Ian Watt in Vancouver, who made a YouTube video, and I've got some weird sunlight coming in that I'm going to move to get out of here just a little bit. And we are also on Periscope Live, which I've got my iPhone set up, and it's actually taking pictures of the screen with Ian and I on it. And I'm actually going to play a video a little bit later. And Ian, we lost your picture. That's all right. You'll probably come back. Are you still hearing me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, I got the picture.
If it doesn't come back in a little bit, I'll have you do something, which would be to refresh your browser, which you can do just by going up and clicking on the little circular arrow up there. And once it refreshes, you'll come right back in, and you may have to call back in and I'll bring you back in, but it sometimes happens that way. So I'm real excited to have Ian here with me today. We've known each other for as long as I've been in the alpaca industry, which is coming on 9 years. Ian has been in the industry a lot longer, and I'm not exactly sure on how long. We'll talk about that. You'll hear from his accent that he's from Australia. He's an incredibly exciting and interesting guy to talk to. Who was it that warned me earlier today? I'm trying to think who said, gosh, I know. It was Wade Geese, who I was talking about having, he said he likes to ring your bell, and he likes to challenge you about how open you are on things. And I said, oh, Wade, you're just so politically correct all the time. So I don't know whether you're still hearing me. If you are, maybe you could try refreshing.
I'm hearing you. Yeah, I'm hearing you, no problem.
All right. Well, we hear you fine. We're not able to see you. At least I'm not, and I think the others may not be able to also. Mark, why don't you indicate whether you're seeing Ian all right? All I see is that the poor internet signal, which we get sometimes for people. So Mark says he doesn't see you either. Did you hear what I said about what Wade told me earlier today? He said I should.
Yes,
I should. Yeah, he said he likes to kick you in the chops. He said just for being open. I thought that was funny. Why don't we just go ahead and get started? And why don't you try one time to refresh, Ian, just to see if it comes. So if you'll click on that little circle thing that's right by your browser, you'll actually be off for a little bit, and then you'll come back on, and you'll probably have to ask me to give you the seat again. And that'll maybe clear up your audio. Mark, were you just hearing a little bit of an echo? Mark, why don't you come online? So I've got Mark, who's one of my helpers, coming in here. Mark's actually in Bangladesh, everybody. So pretty cool to have people on with us from all over the world. And so he's jumping in. I think Ian is refreshing his browser right now. If he doesn't come back in pretty quickly, I will actually call him again. We'll use some of that old technology. Been an awful lot of folks that have come on. I'm not sure. Some of you, I think, are viewing. And you're probably on the website, which is cool. and you'll be able to see everything. You won't be able to ask a question. I've got Ian coming back in now. Let's see if his signal's a little bit better this time. So Ian, you should be back with me in just a second. It is trying to grab you. There it is. There we go. We got you again. So again, cool. And I see equipment behind you, which is very cool. So without further ado, Ian, tell us a little bit about where you're at there today in the room that you're in, because I see stuff behind you.
Yeah, this is my office, and that machine behind is a tensile strength testing machine that Lynn Edens and I bought from China, and we can't make it work. And the Chinese manufacturer keeps saying, "Look at the manual, look at the manual," and there is no manual with it. So it's been sitting here for a year or two now. But it was to test yarn and to test fiber strength in staples. But it's a couple of $1,000s sitting there idly.
Tell us a little bit about, because you just kicked it off wonderfully. You are clearly an entrepreneur. You have lots of different interests. When did you start to just enjoy all kinds of stuff in your life? Did you have that just from being a kid, or when?
I was lecturing at Roseworthy College back in the 60s, and I applied for what was then called a Churchill Fellowship, which would allow me to study dairying and pig production, which is what I was lecturing in overseas. And I asked the head of the Department of Agriculture if he would act as a referee, and he said no, he wouldn't. And when I asked him why, he said, "I don't think you should specialize." He said, "You specialize at your peril, because if you don't specialize in the right thing and you make a mistake, you're back to square one." And I took that to heart. So I've tried a variety of things in my life, trying to make money, and none of which have worked. But the beauty is you open one door and walk in, have a look around, walk out, close the door, and another one opens. So I've spent my life trying different things, and as a result, I've had a very full life, rich with experiences.
That's awesome. So now let's go to the topic tonight. When did alpacas come into your life? Pigs are a little different than alpacas.
Well, yeah, I was in pig and dairy production. Then I went to Papua New Guinea for 6 years and worked in animal production there. And I went back and got into meat marketing by objective measurement and tried a variety of things. And then in 1991, my wife at the time bought her first alpacas, and I've been in it ever since. But my history before that was mainly with sheep.
Okay.
So it was an easy transition from sheep to alpacas.
And what were your first thoughts? Do you remember back? What did you think about these long necked animals and such?
The first thing is that the prices were unsustainable. But my wife's father got into Charolais cattle when they first came in, and he gave me a piece of advice, about the only piece he ever gave me. And he said, if you're going to get into this, get in, get your money out, and then have fun. And that's what it's been.
Okay. And so that was all, again, you said you linked a couple. You said Papua New Guinea and then your wife. And so I'm assuming those alpacas, when you first got them, were in Australia. And so now bring us a little more towards the present, and how did you end up here in the States?
Wade Geese will love this. I actually came over a guy called Craig Orness, who you might remember bought a black Surrey male for a world record price of $250,000. Brought me out to talk to a group of people about the Australian industry, and I came out and talked to these people. Then I went back home, and then I came back out again and did a series of talks from the national show in Kentucky to Columbus, Ohio, and then up to Washington State, and then in California. And I met Marilyn then, and she was married and her husband was dying from cancer. And I went back to Australia, and then she rang me 6 or 8 months later and said, Brian's died. I got to get away and bring my daughter. If we came to Australia, could you show us around? And I said, yeah, sure thing. So she did, and I showed her around, and then she went back, and then she rang back. She said, I'd like to come back and see you. And I said, okay. She came back and said, would you come and live with me in America? And I said, sure. In 3 weeks, I sold everything up, and in 4 weeks, I was here, and I haven't left.
You are an entrepreneur.
So it was the love of a woman.
It was the love of a woman. Nothing wrong with that. Again, that year, about what was that time frame, just to give people a perspective on sort of the U.S.?
That was 2003.
2003. And sort of
2000 to 2003. Yeah.
And really the peak of kind of the value of the market, right? I mean, when you came or close to it, probably, right?
Yes. I couldn't believe how much money was in this industry and how much money Americans had to throw around at pet animals. I'd been the president of the Australian Alpaca Association for 4 years and been on the co-op board at the time. And I knew from the experience in Australia that where prices peaked in the early 90s and then steadily went down, that it had to happen in the US. Then when I got here, it was only a couple of years after I got here that people started selling alpacas on terms, where you could take the animal and then pay it off. And I was talking in seminars at the time, and I said, I think that this is the start of the decline of the value of alpacas. When you start to sell on price and you've got to get buyers by offering them credit, then you really have nowhere else to go but keep dragging the prices down, because your market is disappearing. And the industry was really lucky, I think. When the bubble burst on housing and the credit squeeze started in 2008, the alpaca industry had a wonderful opportunity to mature and reorganize itself under the guise of the housing meltdown. And so I think the industry avoided a lot of really bad PR because of circumstances at the time. But unfortunately for the industry, a lot of people had invested a lot of money in alpacas and they were going to lose it. Or lose a big part of it. And that was a very painful time. 2008 to 2013 was a really painful time, I think, for American alpaca breeders. And we're still coming out of it. There's still people who have an unrealistic value placed on their animals. And most of it, when I talk to these people at seminars and things, is because they paid for it and they want to get their money back. And they just can't quite grasp that they've lost that money, and that they would be better to start rebuilding rather than chasing. And so that's been my consulting advice for
let's back up just a step now, just a little more history. You came here, a love of a woman, wonderful reason to do something. You started over. So talk us through the way you decided you could make some money at that time. Obviously, like we just discussed, the industry was at its peak, but you started doing things, I think, in mentally prep for what was coming. You already saw that these prices were crazy. So I know you started doing consulting. You did things with biopsies. You invented equipment and so on. Give us a little bit of that history, the timing of that, just kind of how did things progress?
Well, the thing that really surprised me, bearing in mind that I had a history in merino wool and merino sheep, I was a wool classer when I was 16, so it goes way back then. I'm 70 now. What amazed me was there was no scientific objectivity in alpaca breeding in the US, when in Australia it was all about that. And that was a direct flow on from experience in the wool industry. I just couldn't believe that people would ship animals across this great country and spend $3,000 on a mating sight unseen. And they had a thought of buying a truck and a trailer and becoming a transporter, because I reckon it was a really lucrative business. And so I had a look at this very carefully, and I think Neil Padgett might remember a seminar at Hagerstown years ago, where I was starting to talk about soft rolling skin and the value of histograms and understanding what happened when fibre was created, and then what happened to fibre as it grew and the animal grew. And it excited some interest, but there are other people who are skeptical, because as soon as they walked out, they were back in the show system, and the show system was all about hype. You might remember at that time there were a lot of breeders who wouldn't do histograms because they believed their hands, and they thought that the histograms weren't reliable. Histograms have been used in Australia for 15 years before that. In fact, the wool buying system in Australia was changing over to fibre testing objectively with OFTA. And here was America with this multi-million-dollar business of alpacas, just going along as if it were a kennel club. And so I just decided at that point that while the show system was essential for marketing, the long-term industry, if there was ever going to be one, was not going to be the show system. It was going to be the growing of fibre in a commercial way. And that's where I've directed all my energy since.
We're struggling.
You still there?
Yeah. Your audio goes in and out just a little bit. I'm actually thinking about that we might go back on phone to use the audio. We'll leave you on the video. The problem is you're going to need to know how to mute your microphone.
Yeah, that's all right.
We might go to that in a second here, just because we were getting great audio quality on the phone, and I can put it up to my microphone and people will hear you just fine. Do you know, can you see what you would do? I think Arib or Mark, if you guys can chime in here on the chat of how we can maybe instruct Ian to how to just basically mute his mic so that he can still hear me, and I would then call him, because I think we'd make the audio a little bit better. Eldon, you just came on. Thank you for coming on. And would you put a little note in the chat about whether you're hearing him come in all right or not? Sometimes it's just a little bit, it gets a little bit broken up. Well, that was a good explanation of why you took the direction you did. And you've been really consistent as long as I've been around, and I've been around since 2008. And you've taken the same view. By the way, Wade told me about a trip that he did with you, where he thought it was amazing when he saw how much the Australians were using this fiber data to make decisions. And here we had this herd that was developing in the U.S. and people weren't even thinking about it. So he just thought that was a huge revelation. So take us now.
Yeah, that wasn't Wade. That wasn't Wade. That was.
Oh, you're right. You know what? You're exactly right. I'm getting calls mixed up. That was Bill Cameron. You're right. It was Bill Cameron. Correct.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we went down, and that trip was 6 alpaca breeders went down, and the whole idea was to have a look at the wool industry to see what opportunities there were for alpaca breeders to move out of the show system and into commercial production of fibre, and to look at meat and hides as well. And the whole trip was centered around that, with a couple of visits to alpaca places to talk to alpaca breeders. And I think their eyes were absolutely opened at what testing goes into the marketing of the Australian wool clip, as well as what objective measurements merino gene suppliers are using to create the new genes for the next generation or two of merino sheep. And I think I really wanted to get some more people to go, because it really opened up their eyes as to what potential was available for them to change the way they think about creating genes, and that was the most exciting trip. I've taken 3 trips with American breeders, and this was the most exciting by far.
So take us to today and what you're doing. How are you? What are your efforts personally to promote our industry to be looking at these animals as fleece production and not a show spectacle, which is still fun, but it's not the Westminster Kennel Club. But what are you doing in that area? By the way, Mike Morak, welcome.
I think the show. I think the show system is essential. I don't think it will have as much impact on the future of fiber production as a commercial industry that is more focused on technology than personal appraisal. But for me, I run an After 2000, one of the few privately owned After 2000s, and I just upgraded it at a cost of 30 grand that I've got to try and work back from somewhere. And so I use that, and I've introduced a new service, a $3 test, so people can get their fiber diameter and standard deviation numbers for $3 without paying for the premium test. Then I do histograms as well, and that is about understanding more of what density is and what it looks like. And I've been doing those for 10 years now, and they've worked really well. Some breeders in the US have been on the histogram system now for that length of time, and they're showing real benefits. I'm a big proponent of Jim Watts's SRS, soft rolling skin. I'm all about density and length. Selecting for density and length, don't select for anything else, because everything else happens as a consequence. And then I got into, I was on the board of AOBA for 4 years, and 4 pretty frustrating years. I was the treasurer for 3 of those. And then I got, as you might remember, we set up a little group to have a look at commercial production of alpaca fiber some years ago, and that sort of ran into a bit of a hole. So a group of us set up the Alpaca Coalition of America, and that is an organization designed to encourage commercial production of high quality fiber and meat and hides as a commercial venture. Then I got into designing shearing tables, hydraulically operated shearing tables, and that didn't work. And then I got into circular skirting tables, and then that didn't work either. Americans are funny people. They'll spend a fortune on a truck and trailer, and then pay $25 to shear an animal that they can shear for $5 themselves. So now I just concentrate on seminars, workshops, fiber testing, biopsy testing, and putting all my energy. And
as I understand it, you're going to take the 2000 machine with you. At least Bill says you are to his event in July, or is that right? So if you do, I'm assuming that you're going to be able to.
Yeah, if I drive up, I can take it, but the airline wants some incredible insurance to carry this machine. Wow. The machine's worth $100,000. And the airlines get really worried when you say, "Oh, this box is worth $100 grand." Then they want huge premiums. For me to ship this to anywhere in the country with airline fees and insurances around $800 a pop,
crazy.
It's a lot of money. But if I drive up, I'll put it in the back of the truck.
So let me throw out just a hypothetical for you. If we were 10 years from now, and there is a sustainable, and that's a tough word, by the way, a lot of people put a lot of different definitions to it, but let's say a sustainable, ongoing alpaca industry, and individual producers are at least are making some money or marginal money, some kind of money from their alpaca production. What is, two questions. One, what does that individual herd need to look like? And what do they need to be able to be paying for various elements of their alpaca care? You mentioned shearing for one. People are paying $25 to $30 today. There's feed, obviously. There's care, veterinary care, and so on. There's the pasturing and the care of the animal just on a day-to-day basis. So again, there's two questions here. 10 years from now, there is an industry. What is it going to look like as an industry? And what are the people who are producing animals? What are their businesses going to look like? And what are various elements of it going to cost? So example, how much are they going to be paying for shearing?
Okay, we just separate the show system away from the commercial industry. In 10 years' time, there'll be 1.1 million alpacas in the US. And out of that 1.1 million, there'll be about 130,000 alpacas born in that year. So there will be somewhere around 70,000 males hitting the market, of which probably less than 500 will be herd sire quality. So the balance will have a limited life of about 5 years producing fleece, after which they will have a value either as a pet to somebody or as meat and hides. I haven't seen a model yet that shows that you can make money from alpacas commercially if you don't slaughter. The future, in 10 years, the industry will largely be focused on existing sheep and goat breeders, because those people already have the infrastructure in place. They have the technical and practical skills of running livestock and with handling fiber-producing animals. Shearing will be $3.50 to $4 a head. There will be very little veterinary intervention. The animals that will be run commercially will have no hair from the knees down. They'll have very clean faces, and they'll be around 140 to 160 pound live weight. ET will be widespread. AI, I think, is a really highly questionable one with alpaca, considering the fragility of the sperm in particular. There will be fiber interlotting pools where fiber will be delivered, graded or sorted or classed, whatever you want to use the term, and then bales will be created and they'll be offered for sale either by auction or by private treaty. That's about what I think the industry will be. The males will be sold off a farm at weaning, and they'll probably be sold for around $90. The mating fees will be about $30. By doing their own shearing and a lot of that other stuff, the growers will be able to make a small profit. They'll be buying herd sires for $1,500. Those sires will come with a whole lot of data attached to them, both fleece and meat. If you look at the wool industry, the merino wool industry, this animal is now being grown as a dual purpose. The American wool industry is based on meat and fiber second, whereas the Australian and South African and Russian industries are built on wool first, meat second. But in Australia now they measure the thickness of the skin. Thinner skin is higher fertility in animals and higher density. There's a layer of fat that improves fertility in females. And then they measure the depth of the meat and also the cutability, how tender it is, all done with a single sonar reading. All that information, birth weights, internal parasite resistance, all of these data will be the platform from which to sell and buy. If you look at a at a crowd called Leosim, which is Michael's spelt in reverse.com. His whole ram catalogue of over 3,000 rams a year doesn't have one word in it. It's all data. The rams are even numbered. They don't even have names. The spreadsheet is just numbers and nothing else. We took Bill and his group down there, and they just were blown away. They have a program there called Jivet, where they collect eggs from 6-week-old lambs, fertilize them in the laboratory, and then plant them in surrogate ewes. And we went in his shed, and we had 2 ewes that hadn't had a lamb yet, with 10 of their progeny alongside them and 10 of their progeny alongside them in the one shearing shed. And these ewes were only 15 months old. And that's where the technology is going to go, and the commercial industry will embrace that technology and race ahead in terms of improvement.
Let's
from where we are
do
now.
A couple things, just because I think the sound is still not perfect. We were hearing most of it, but I think you said we went out 10 years, there'd be 1.1 million, maybe you said 1.3, but in that range, that there would be approximately 110,000.
Yes.
I didn't hear whether you said males born that year or total.
No, 110 to 120,000
and
Korea born
and that there
year.
would, here's the number that really hit me, and this is what I think people have just got to get. How many breeding males out of that 110,000? I think you said 500, not 50,000, not right. I mean, it was a very small number.
It'll be a case of where the 1% is really important. You won't want to use rams or males that are not in the top 2% of males
Which would
that are
mean
available.
2,000.
And these males will be cheap.
Something like that, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's it, and that's the way it should be now. If you look at the registry figures here, in Australia, if you want to register a crea, the male has to be certified to a standard. If you look at the numbers in the registers, they're pretty similar. Well, they were when I last looked at them in 2012. The numbers of females are pretty similar, but the number of males that have sired progeny between the US and Australia, it's more than 3 times the number of males in the US than in Australia for the same number. And what that means, of course, to a breeder, if you're looking at breeding on an industry-wide basis, is that you're not concentrating your genetics on the economic traits. You're spreading the genetic gain across a whole lot of traits, which unfortunately the show ring rewards. If you look at the use of sires, you really wouldn't, unless you're into a niche market, and I can hear the coloured breeders jumping up and down straight away, you would use white and light males. The industry is all about white. And for people say, well, colour, there's a market for colour. There absolutely is. There is no question about that at all. But it is a limited market.
It's a cottage market, and 10 years from now, it wouldn't be any different, right? That in 10 years, if it was sustainable, it's going to even be more of a white market, right? Yes,
absolutely. I can't see the consumer market turning around and not wanting variety. I mean, all of the manufacturers will tell you that they've now got to bring out 4 ranges a year instead of they might have got away with 2 before. People buy a colour this year and they don't want it next year. They throw it away. They give it away, whatever. And that's particularly so with the market under 35-year-old. The older market, our generation, tend to buy things for long term. The younger generation don't buy like that. And they're not likely to change.
Let me make...
I noticed that Michael just says that where do you see
he asked, what will the prices of
fleeces
be in 5 years? What are your thoughts there?
I think he's deliberately goading me.
He'll do that at times.
I'm not a big fan of superfine fleeces. The merino industry is suffering from chasing fineness. The world demand for alpaca fiber, or for alpaca fiber and merino wool, is 20 to 23 micron. That's the stage that's the grade of wool that brings the best return to the grower. People who chase fineness, and this is a big bitch I have about the show system, is it rewards fineness. And I don't know why we reward a trait that nobody is paying a premium for. People can add value. They add value when they sort in the first place. But if they process, the rate of profit gain stops at the production of tops. As soon as you get into producing yarn, the risk increases and the profits drop. So you get your greatest return taking them to tops. At the moment, the top demand is for 20 to 23 micron. There is a limited demand. I think we get romanced by $1 million bale of wool and say, if they can get $1 million for 15 micron, man, what could we get for alpaca? Alpaca's not that much better than wool when you look at it technically. We have a lot of passion around alpaca fiber, and we like to believe that this is an exotic fiber that has attributes better than wool. It actually doesn't have many attributes better than wool at all. What it does have, though, is an ability to be worn next to the skin in very fine yarn. But the money in fine yarns is for men's and women's suiting. It's not for sweaters and cardigans and scarves and gloves. It's for men and women's suiting. And those two things do not turn over quickly. People who buy high quality suiting tend to wear them for a lot of years because high quality suiting lasts a long time. So that's a limited market. The two big mills in Italy that were handling superfine merino, one of them is sold and is known by Ralph Lauren, and he's going to use it for producing cashmere. But the cashmere industry is in a slump, and cashmere prices are through the floor. The quality is gone. The Chinese are flooding the market and the industry with low quality cashmere. And there's a consumer set against cashmere right now. And we need to be careful about that. I think one of the problems Alpaca United had when it set up, and when I was on the board, I promoted it really heavily, was that they didn't understand, or their management didn't understand, that you cannot turn fiber production on a dime like you can meat production or crops. I mean, if there's a shortage in the cotton industry, you just plant more acres and it's fixed in a year. In alpacas, you can't. It takes generations to bring about change. And we need to be very careful as an industry about what our buyers want, because if we don't produce what the buyers want, we're going to go broke. And buyers aren't paying a premium for fineness. So if you look at yields for fine fleeces, because breeders don't concentrate on density, they concentrate on fineness, they're getting lower yields. If you look at superfine merinos, the total clip off the merino might be 6 or 7 pound, and they might only take 2 pound of that and put it in the super bale, and the rest of it is different. So there's a lot for us to learn, a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this. You're being awesome. So Mike asked another question. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's stay on our 10 year from now, or even 5, but let's say 10. And I'm somebody who's got 25 to 50 alpacas. I'm going to throw some numbers out. One, I think I'm going to try to mirror what you said. And they're almost all females. I don't need any males. And I've been butchering. I've been doing all the right sort of things. And I'm going to be paying about $3 a head to shear. I'm going to pay I'm going to sell my males if I sell them for like $90, or I'm going to be making meat out of them and hides. And I think I'm trying to get back to Michael's question here, which is, I think you answered it indirectly, but if I have a dense animal with a long enough fleece, and let's say it's producing an 8-pound blanket, that's big today. We all know that, but let's say we're to that point. And so I have 25 times 8, that's 400, that's 200. So I've got 200 pounds of fleece. Can I cover my costs selling that 200 pounds of fleece plus some additional that I'm making from some hides and meat that I'm getting? Can I have a 25 animal herd, or is the industry gonna be big herds where the economy of scale has to be in big numbers?
I think of the 25 breeding females, you can probably make a reasonable living if you use one sire.
Okay.
Do your own shearing, you grow your own hay, and you have an infrastructure that you're not paying off.
Okay.
In other words, you're not paying for a new shearing shed and fencing and water reticulation, right, pasture improvements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And you're using family labor. I think you can probably make some money because you're selling animals. You're not keeping males, you're just keeping a male to cover the whole herd. One male can handle 30 to 35 females in a breeding season. So, and it's folly to own more than one, because as soon as you buy a male, he's got a lifespan in your herd of not more than 3 years. And then he's got to go. He's got to be replaced. So you've got to get another one. So if you've got 2 on the place, or 3 or 4, like some people have, you're talking about big capital replacements in terms of cash flow each year. And then you've got to find something to do with the male when he's finished on your farm. And so I think what that model will be is small breeders will tend to own a stable of males together. So it may be that you and I and Michael and Neil and Bill and someone else say, right, we're going to throw $5,000 each into the pot, and we're going to buy 2 males a year for the next 5 years. And we'll move the males between our own herds. And that will help bring down the cost per mating. We have to get smarter about holding or retaining conceptions. The death rate is too high. I think it's actually much higher than people think. If you look at the registration numbers, a female alpaca on average has a career every 15 months. Most people would be appalled if you suggested to them that their flock, their herd, produces a career every 15 months. But when you go back and have a look at their numbers, quite often it's true. So we need to understand what we need to do to keep pregnancies more. It's those deaths in the first 3 months we don't spend enough attention on. We need to find out why they happen, and is there a management way that we can fix this? Because it's going to be a cheap one. They're already pregnant. Why wouldn't we spend a few dollars to keep them pregnant and let them lose the career and then have to start all over again and be 3 to 6 months behind the 8 ball? The budget would go straight out the window.
Right.
The meat thing is interesting. You don't get a value from the hide if you sell the animal for slaughter. You only get a value for the hide if you slaughter the animal for yourself. And I think it comes back again to what can be done with syndicates. Syndicates could go together and say, look, between us, we've got 100 breeding females. In any 1 year, we're going to slaughter 20. Those 20, we'll get around 60 pound, 80 pound of meat from. We got 1,600 pound of meat. If we process that and just make salami, for example. And we'll market it under a syndicate name, and we'll market it within 150 miles of where we live. That, I think, is a model that'll see out my lifetime, at least, because we just won't be to the system enough. If USDA do not put in standards for the certification of alpaca meat, we're going to have to look at these small, local, regional models. But USDA will want, I reckon, probably now close to $1 million to set up a set of protocols for alpaca. And then you're going to find an abattoir that will do it.
Right.
Because the problem with alpaca in an abattoir is you've got to kill them on a meat or a deer chain. You can't kill on a sheep chain, because on a sheep chain, their neck runs along the ground, and that is a big no-no. So you've got to lift them up. So you're using heavy-duty equipment, and it costs more. It costs more to run that equipment and to staff it, because people have to go up and down on elevators and stairs and all that sort of stuff. So the regional model is value adding. What can I add value to ground meat to make it the best? And at the moment, quite frankly, the best way to make money from alpaca meat is to put it out as fresh dog food. You make more money doing that than anything else. And that's a huge market in itself.
It's a huge market. Huge. Yeah, it's amazing how big of a market it is. Is anybody doing it? Is anybody making a commercial, even at a really small scale, dog food from alpaca that you know of?
Oh, yeah. I've heard of some people that are doing it in their home. I actually bought a grinder to try it here, and I wouldn't feed it to the dog because I like it too much myself. But
so do I.
You can buy these little grinders on Craigslist for $100 a pop, and you can process stuff yourself really easily. Like I just saw an Australian laboratory just put out how to make a hamburger the same as In-N-Out hamburgers here. It's just to grind the meat, then grind it again and add 40% fat, and then cook it. And you've got a burger that is just like In-N-Out that has a cult following. So if you did that, you run into a problem that as soon as you sell it to humans, you run into product liability. I guess you do with dogs too. But I offered some here on Craigslist just to see what would happen, and I got flooded with people who wanted to buy it.
Well, I think we've been slaughtering and producing meat for our own consumption and for sale for almost 4 years now, and we don't have any trouble selling. I have a list way longer than what I can produce. I slaughter about 60 animals a year.
Yes.
We love, personally, we put 5% beef fat into our ground meat, and I guarantee that Deb can produce any kind of a dish out of our ground meat, whether it be meatloaf, whether it be a hamburger, whether it be you name it, and you won't know you're not eating beef. Or bottom line, you'll think it's the best beef you've ever had. It's that good. And it is. So we love, and we raise dogs. I will give out one caution, and live people who feed live or feed fresh meat to their dogs know this. Dogs have evolved through the years to where they're not carnivores entirely anymore, and meat alone will not satisfy all the nutritional needs of a dog, a domestic dog today. So if you start feeding anybody, this is a little advice a little bit, because I've done it for a long time with dogs. You've got to feed something in addition to raw meat. It doesn't matter whether it's alpaca or pork or beef. You have to have some other additions, because it doesn't meet their needs. There's all kinds of recipes online, by the way. Go ahead.
There's an interesting. I had some hides tanned in Iowa, and I was talking to a guy there, and there's an alpaca breeder in Iowa who slaughters his own, and he actually dries out the leg bones and sells them at the farmer's market for $5 a pop. So there's $20. He then takes the tendon out of the back of the neck and the tendons on the legs, dries them in the oven and sells them as dog chews. and he makes $30 on selling those at a farmer's market. Then he takes the neck, chops it up, and sells it for a ossobuco or an ossobuco type meal, and he gets a premium of $6 a pound for those, even though it's mostly bone. But what people are buying, of course, is the marrow. And then he just takes out the fillet and takes out the loin. And I suggested that he tell him that he should take out the Scotch fillet as well out of the shoulder. He grinds the rest up, and he makes nearly $300 an alpaca.
Yeah.
By doing that.
Yeah.
And that is profit. That is profit.
To go back to Michael's thing, for my dog friends, we sell every bone that we take off to somebody with dogs, and they're incredibly attractive.
Yep.
Let's get to Mike's couple of other questions.
To go back to Mike with price, I don't think the prices are going to change a great deal from what they are now.
Yeah.
I think we haven't seen what China's going to do, and it really scares me what China can do. And that's why we need to create and protect a brand of American alpaca. The Australians are doing it, and I think we should do it here. Because China currently has the biggest stockpile of alpaca fiber in the world, and it currently is importing alpacas more than any other country in the world. And they have no compunction at all about mislabeling their product to get a market edge. They did it with cashmere. They'll do it with alpaca. They'll call it alpaca, and it'll be 10% alpaca, and it'll peel because it'll have low uniformity and high SDs and high AFDs. They'll blend it with a bit of wool because they're the biggest buyer of wool in the world, and our brand needs to be able to withstand it. Our industry needs to be able to withstand it, and the only way we can do that, I believe, is to own the brand, like the cashmere industry did, and manage it tightly. I don't know who's going to do it.
Michael has a couple other questions here because we're going to run out of time.
I would have loved
Can you see Michael's questions? He asks one, actually he's making one that's sort of a comment, but comparing wool socks with alpaca socks, our experience has been warmer feet with alpaca, fire retardant as well. Would not this provide an advantage to alpaca along with wearability? He was, I think, responding to your question about similarities with wool. What are your thoughts there?
It's interesting. It's interesting. I've just got some results back from some abrasion testing that the coalition had done on hides. And when you start to research abrasion, which is what I would call wearability, abrasion or wearability has more to do with twist than it has with any other single thing. The tighter the twist and the longer the fibers, the more resistant to abrasion fiber is. So it's really tough with alpaca to say it wears better than wool, because if you spun the two of them to the same tension and the same diameter or weight, and then applied them to an abrasion test, it would seem that there's not much difference between them. And that amazed me, because I always thought the fiber itself was abrasion resistant. In actual fact, while that's true to some extent, it's the way it's spun and how it's used that provides the abrasion. The alpaca socks and the warmer feet with wool, I'm a bit of a skeptic. The insulation value of alpaca is the same as wool, and you can change the insulation value of any fiber by the amount of air that you trap in the yarn. There is the theory that because most alpaca fibers have some form of modulation in it, that helps trap the moisture. But I think it is such a small amount that it has no impact on the overall numbers. So while alpaca, if you could get alpaca and wool yarn of the same twist and the same weight, knitted on the same needles to the same tension to the same pattern, and then put one on each foot and then wore it for 3 or 4 days to see what the difference was, I don't think you would find much difference. I don't know if alpaca is that good, would it attract a premium price? It does with alpaca breeders and people who love alpacas, but put it out in the retail market, and I'm not so sure. I've tested with people here when silky alpacas started to come onto the scene. I tested a whole lot of different fleeces, and then I washed them, dried them, and put them in different sample bags, and then asked people, just random people, if they could tell me which was the brightest, smoothest fibre, and rank them 1 to 10. And statistically, no one could tell the difference. And I think it's a bit the same with this. I wouldn't like to think that we're going to get romanced about the exclusivity of alpaca. Alpaca, for me at the moment, is a blending product. It works best with a blend, and it makes more money for the grower as a blend. And alpaca adds value to American wool, whereas it's the other way around in Australia. So, and Michael's other thing, registration. I don't think the register will have any more animals on it than what it's got now, and may certainly actually have less over the next couple of years, at least. I think the register's had its heyday. And I think that's one of the problems AOA might have with its funding model. It's been dropping in registrations, I think, now for 4 or 5 years. It's the same in Australia. I think the heyday of the register is gone. Quite frankly, I don't think if people get the information that's objective, they won't care about the breeding.
Well, Ian, you have been awesome. We're just over an hour here, and even though we started a little bit late, I want to be respectful for our audience, and we've got a lot of people that are online actually on the Smart Member site itself, and I can see that with this number that's up at the top of the screen. So I want to be respectful to them. I put your website, at least one of them, down here. Tell us a little bit about either how people could reach you, what's the best way, and why they might reach out to you as it relates to what you can be doing potentially to help people. You've been really open and honest about your views, and promote yourself a little bit here, or I'll do it for you. But tell us how they can reach you. What's the best way, and then what you might do for breeders or anyone in the industry if they have questions.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that. The one thing that I have got going at the moment, this is the 3rd year, is the National Commercial Alpaca Fleece Show, which is a show that rewards commercial trades, and not so much the standard fleece show trades. And this year we've introduced a scorecard for the first time, and it was just uploaded today on www.alpacafleece.com. It's a fleur people's fleeces in. They don't have to be from registered animals. Animal it comes off of. He's just interested in what it is. And there's prize money for the winners of the classes. There are classes by micron, and then each micron class is split up into colours. This year, for the first time, I didn't do colours before, but there's just been a bit of pressure to do it. And it's for Surrey and Wakaya. People send their fleeces in. I take 3 samples from it. I check the fleece over just to have a look. I measure the length, and there's penalties for variation in length. The three are given the full premium test. I create a web page for them on the alpacastats.com, and then they have those data forever. So it's $20 to enter a fleece. They get $30 worth of testing up front and the chance to win $200 for the highest value fleeces. We determine the winners by the value of the fleece. So what I do is the week before it closes in July, I take the last wool sale price for wool in Australia, merino wool, and apply that price from a kilogram to a pound for alpaca, and so get a value of what that fleece is worth. And then people get paid, they get the prize money based on the highest value fleece. It takes all the interest away from points and more to what that fleece is worth if someone was prepared to pay that price. And so, and people can get in touch with me at any time. Just go to the website or just an email or a phone call. It's, I love this industry, and I'm at the stage of my life that my value to experience in the industry is going to become less and less as younger people step up, and particularly when sheep and goat breeders get into the industry.
By the way, Michael
the whole thing will change. And in the meantime, support the coalition.
Michael just said something nice. Thank you, Mike. He said everyone wins due to the great feedback in the show, which is awesome. And Layla, welcome. Layla was with us on our first show. Layla is a young graduate in the ag field. She's trying to figure out her place out in the ag world. And she's come on with us now a couple of times. It's awesome. And we really want to help her see what she can be doing. Hey, how you doing, Layla? And we've had Ian with us tonight. Boy, I'll tell you, if I were everybody out there, and I'm going to do it, as soon as we are done here, this will actually get uploaded to YouTube. There'll be a replay on our site, which is Mark put on the site name for alpacasummit.smartmember.com. So as soon as this is done, people can go in probably less than 5 minutes and watch the replay. And you'll be able to, there was just so much great information. I hope that your audio signals were all right. I was having a little bit of problem on my end, but I did see other people saying in the chat that their signal was good. Go in and watch the replays. I'm going to do something to end here just real quick to show you something else that's out there on the site, which is you should probably go in and watch. I think you'd enjoy it. And that is that we actually have videos that are up, and I'm going to show you something we can do now on Blab just for a second. I'm going to get rid of this one, and I'm going to put in a link here, and you're going to see a video come up for just a second. Oh, actually, that's still Ian's address. I thought I had copied this. Take me just a second here. I got to copy the URL here of this. Can you take me just a minute? There it is. And I'm going to put this up. And again, thanks so much to Ian. This was so great. I'm going to, hopefully we'll have him back on again. I think we said to everybody, the Alpaca Summit's now intended to be going year round. We're going to be able to put these out all year. We have Neil Padgett coming up on Friday. We have Wade Geese coming in next week on Wednesday. We've already gotten Bill and Jennifer Cameron to come on. Every week, we're going to try to do one or two of these. Mark has been putting up Ian's website and also our sites. We've got a YouTube video that's going to come up in just a second here. I just wanted to show you just a little glimpse of it. And again, this was just packed with information. We talked a little bit about what would the industry look like 10 years from now if it was a sustainable industry. And Ian talked about it. He's not afraid to just give his opinions. Layla, you should go back and listen to it for whatever ag industry that you end up getting into. So this is just, for whatever reason, this is taking longer to load than I thought. It should come up here in a second. I think I got to get rid of the other screen here. It's still loading. from the video. And we'll be back on, like I said, Friday night, same time, 6 o'clock Mountain, 5 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern with Neil Padgett. We're going to talk to Neil about some of his breeding. He's been doing this for a long time. He'll be on a panel with Ian in July, over the July 4th timeframe. I think it's July 1st maybe or 2nd that Ian's going to be in with the Camerons at the event that they're putting on. So I'd encourage people to sign up for that. And I don't know, this video doesn't look like it's going to come on. So I think we're going to call it for the night. Ian, thank you so much. Do you have anything else you'd like to say just to finish this off?
No, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I just like
Michael, I hope you heard that. You owe Ian a bottle of wine. So we'll end on that note. We've got a debt that Michael needs to pay. Michael's been an amazing supporter of the summit for the last 2 years. And guys, thanks so much. Signing off from Colorado. Ian signing off from California. And we will see you next time. Bye.